So this is a pretty obscure project if you're not already aware of the context surrounding it. So as an artiste, here is the scoop. Several weeks ago, I was scrolling lackadaisically on Instagram as one does during a pandemic, and there was a sponsored ad from an art museum. Basically, this group called the Curators hosted this mask making competition that was a contest that was opened internationally. And there were two categories. One was for making a mask design that could be printed on fabric masks like a pattern, and the other, more fun category was an art decorative sort of mask. Obviously, the second option appealed the most to me as it allowed indefinite creative potential since it only needed to be original and not necessarily functional. And if you can't tell from my last video, I love biology and biological things, so likewise, I thought it would be pretty rad if I grew my mask out of plants. Not to toot my own horn or whatever, but I realized retrospectively that this was a rather clever idea as plants serve as nature's filters, alike how surgical masks are synthetic filters too. And of the most filter-like plants, moss or bryophytes are some of the most relevant. Moss is already such a cool organism, mainly because of how old evolutionarily speaking it is, but it is also interesting to me because it symbolizes the degradation or abandonment of something, and when you add it to fashion or special effects makeup, it implies that nature has sort of taken back control, or as the recent memes will have you say it, the earth is healing itself. During my whole aesthetics research, I realized that chia seeds are also easy to sprout, especially on fabric. And also, can we just appreciate that this is an asked enough question that Google made a subheading for it?
Chia pet.
I found this one artist that had grown chia seeds on clothes as part of an installation work, and I drew inspiration from her, and I knew that I wanted to do the same kind of thing, but this time just on a fabric mask, but with the added touch of including lots of mosses too. So with a solid design in mind, I then set about sketching it. Though you'll see the initial sketch and the result are definitely different, it's always helpful to illustrate your ideas. I made 3 different masks with various materials such as burlap, landscaping fabric, and fabric stabilizer. I wasn't sure if the moss would grow better on one or the other, and I wanted to be sure that I had options since I had limited time. But as you'll see, none of this came to fruition, and I'm only showing you this part anyway because other people that want to make masks out of plants may find this useful, of course. So I'm making the mask base the same way that I made my masks that I sold on Etsy, which are now officially retired. So thank you to everyone that bought one. It was definitely a very satisfying endeavor. The masks are pretty simple. You just cut 2 pieces from the pattern out of lining and then 2 out of exterior fabric. Then you sew each of the 2 pieces right sides together down the middle curve, you flip them out, then top stitch parallel to the middle seam. I also then fold over the edges at this stage and sew them down too. Next, you just place the lining and the exterior right sides together and sew them along the top and the bottom, folding the lining edges over while you do this. Then you can flip them inside out and then flip the exterior ends once more over and sew them over the lining, but make sure that you don't start right at the edge as you want to leave little holes for the ear ties to slip through. These are my masks, and now let me show you how I ruined my masks. When I was looking up how to grow moss, I found one of the easier things to do is to simply transplant pre-existing moss colonies onto another surface. So of course I went to my local forest and I grabbed some clumps of what, as far as I could tell, was moss. If it's not actually moss, it's at the very least moss-like, which is fine to me. I also collected lots of fungi and lichen and generally all the really nasty parts that you try not to collect when you go into a forest, particularly ones that grew on the sides of fallen tree trunks and all kinds of fun stuff like that. So here was where I was met with my first obstacle. If you look up how to grow moss, you'll inevitably come across the infamous moss smoothie. Now, maybe this actually has worked for some people in some timeline, but I discovered way too late that it was largely an urban myth perpetuated by commercial garden sites and Pinterest boards. To save you the trouble of attempting moss graffiti yourself, let me tell you, it doesn't work.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my god, stop you fucking lying.
Though I did enjoy these fantastic illustrations on WikiHow.
Wow.
But guys, I didn't know this at the time, so I filmed this whole segment hoping it'd be ASMR-y to watch, so at the very least, enjoy the next couple minutes of me making the moss smoothie. So to prep my masks for this, I stuffed them with foil and then I laid them out on this cardboard thingy. And now look at the grossness of this moss smoothie. It's so gross. I think I gagged several times pouring this out. I mean, just look at it.
I am disgusted. I can't. Oh wow.
Anyway, the idea here is that you paint this on your surface and then keep it moist, and then theoretically moss will start growing within a couple weeks. The only thing that I had growing was mold, and I've done you the favor of not documenting that part. You are so welcome. Nevertheless, since this moss plan didn't work out, I then flocked back to the idea of chia seeds, which was also marked by some failure. Don't mind my hands for the rest of this video. I stained my back porch and some of the stain got on my fingers and palms. So from here on out, all the nasty crud on my hands is probably most likely due to that and is not a gross shit stain, I can assure you. So the chia seeds idea is relatively tame. You get some chia seeds, you get a mask, and then you spread the seeds on the mask, water them, and hope for the best. I put seeds both inside the mask and on the outside, but it seemed that the seeds inside were the only ones that sprouted, and this was really weird as the roots came out on the lining side, but the green leaves were trapped inside. So long story short, they couldn't get sunlight and then they died. Furthermore, halfway through this, I switched to a larger spray bottle to water them, and it wasn't until after whatever little seeds I had that did sprout died that I remembered that I had used this spray bottle for bleach several years ago. So basically, I'm a plant tormentor that used a blender to mutilate innocent moss and gave chia sprouts a long, painful death by poisoning them with bleach residue. Once I realized all of this, and atoned for my sins, I decided to start over. And I used the mask base from a mask that I never completed and regrew some more chia seeds, but this time watering them without bleach. And believe it or not using bleach enables plants to grow. And I didn't document all of that part, but it enabled me to continue with my project. And I just did what I could have done from the very beginning, and I just glued clumps of moss to my mask to fill in all of the gaps. The end result, it's just as good, probably better, than I ever would have gotten if I actually grew moss on my mask. In the end, I am satisfied with it, as the chia seeds were able to grow on the mask itself, even if I cheated a little bit with the moss. The next half of my aesthetic and stylish inspiration for this project was the recent release of The Last of Us 2. This series is one of my favorite video games for many reasons, but particularly for the sheer aesthetics of it. The infected, aka zombies in this game, are infected by the cordyceps fungus, and so their infected form is unlike any kind of conventional zombie. They have fungi sprouting from their skin, and they look very gritty. And I thought this fit perfectly with my moss mask, especially considering the irony that face masks are supposed to keep one from getting infected. So if you remember my collected lichen and fungus, I then used these to make my own special effects pieces. So I'm just gonna go right out and say it. Don't do what I did in this video. I do not condone my behavior. Mushrooms and fungi can be especially poisonous, and gluing them to your skin is probably like a really stupid thing to do. I saw this, I knew this, yet I did it anyway, because who am I to call myself an artist if I am not prepared to die for my art? To be fair, I did coat each of the fungus pieces in a couple coats of latex, which I presumed would serve enough as a barrier to my skin should any kind of toxin seep out. And I was only going to be wearing these special effects pieces for 30 minutes at most for the photo shoot, so I wasn't really worried about being poisoned. Also, I looked up what I collected after the fact, and the fungus I used the most of was false turkey tail, which is evidently harmless, so it all worked out anyway. I used more latex to adhere the fungus to my skin, and then I used metallic eyeshadows and things to make myself look more worse for wear, which is a fun thing to try to accomplish. And by the way, if it looks like I'm talking during this part, it's because I was, and I just realized after the fact that I didn't turn my microphone on, so instead of me talking to you, you get this lovely voiceover. Oh, and also during this part, because I don't know whenever I'll get to tell this story, in my college studies, I took a class called The Physician's Garden, which was all about medicinal plants, and we did have one unit on fungi, which are not plants, obviously. And we had a mycologist come in, and basically the mycologist had us all walk around outside to collect mushrooms and stuff. You see, the gag here is that we did this on the day that a hurricane, a literal hurricane, was sweeping through town. So it was extremely windy, extremely rainy, and then also none of us had any kind of rainproof shoes, so we all just decided that it'd be better to do it barefoot because that way we could at least walk home in dry sneakers. So we were walking around in a hurricane barefoot, and guess what, where the best place to find mushrooms is? The graveyard. Just imagine a bunch of tired college-age students walking around barefoot in a hurricane in a graveyard collecting a bunch of different mushrooms. That was definitely an experience that I had while I was at college. Probably actually one of the better ones, if I'm being honest. Got those shrooms. Before I show you the finished look, please be sure to visit the mask project gallery on the curators.com to vote for my entry. It's free and it's a really easy way to support me as an artist, plus the other masks in the gallery are really cool to look at and I'm sure that you'll enjoy looking at them too. You can visit the link in the description below to vote. Please, 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 please just give me a cheeky little vote. I would really, really appreciate it. So with all of that said, thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope that you got a feel for the kind of the aesthetics that I was going for throughout all of this, and here is the ultimate gristly, mossy look.